Eddie, you want to tell us where it was?
You take FM 3383 from 105 toward Rangerland. That's about out there about 5 miles from the railroad. That when you cross over, on the right hand side of the road was Midland gasoline plant. The way we found it in the old days is that we told everybody to drive out there, look on the left hand side of the road, and you'll see a big flare. Turn right. That's the gasoline plant right there where the flare was.
Everybody followed the flare.
Everybody followed the flare.
Even named the yearbook after our flare, I think.
I don't know as much about that plant as a lot of people do, but I'm going to tell you what I do know. My dad, Archie Reed, worked out there, and that's why I know a little bit about it. He started in about 49 or something like that. Don't know the exact date. And he retired in December 1971. Well, my first experience out there as a worker bee was in 1957. I was going to college, and I'm sure my dad asked them if I could come out there and work, because they let me come out there and work. And they let me help the painter. The painter's name was Mildred Pruitt. So we painted all summer long. We pulled him that little seat that he rode in to get up those towers so he could paint them. But we had a good time, and he did too. Let's see. That was the only time I worked out there till a little bit later. I had to graduate from college, go off and spend a little time with Uncle Sam, and then I became a school teacher for a few years. Well, after I taught school, I needed to do something in the summer, so they let me come to work out at the plant during the summer. And so I relieved in the lab, I relieved in the office, and I was a roustabout whenever they needed a roustabout. That was a lot of fun, and I did that for let's see, 4 years, 60, 61, 62, and 63. Well, in 1963, things changed a little bit, but I got hired full-time. There was one man retired, and the superintendent asked me if I wanted to go to work, so I decided I'd quit teaching school and go to work at the gas plant. As a roustabout, by the way, as a roustabout. And that was okay, because I did get to relieve in the lab and also in the office for vacation relief. The plant was owned then and operated by Warren Petroleum Company, and the superintendent, when I was there, his name was Hyman, Marvin Hyman. Really good guy, easygoing. I think most everybody that worked there liked him a lot. Let's see.
How long did you work there in the Conroe area?
Okay, that's a good question. I went to work in September 1963, and I worked until February 1965. By then, the plant had changed hands. Champlin Petroleum Company bought it, I believe, from Warren Petroleum Company.
Yeah.
There were some reasons that Warren had to sell the plant, and Champlin bought it. Well, now I'm working for Harold McGee, who became the superintendent in about 1963, because he was there when I went to work that summer. Okay. And he was also the person that told me to go up to East Texas and change jobs. I really am grateful to him for that.
Well, were you still working for Champlin when you went to, was it, Carthage?
I went to Carthage, Texas, and worked for Champlin Petroleum Company about let's see, from 60, well, then I went from 65 to 1969, and I got transferred to Oklahoma.
Okay.
Well, Champlin had a interesting thing. They had a magazine that they published. I can't remember whether it was monthly or bi-monthly. It was called The Cycler. Each month they would show different areas of the company. Sometimes it was gas plants, sometimes it was oil field work, or pipelines, just whatever someone chose, and I don't know who that someone was. Well, when I got to Oklahoma, I was working for Warren Crowd.
Okay.
He'd been transferred
He's
up
in
there too.
He was in one of these pictures that I had.
He was the superintendent when I went to Carthage, and he got transferred up there. And I heard that he asked for me to come, and they allowed me to go up there and work for him. Well, when I got up there, the office is near the Capitol in Oklahoma City, and they gave me a big office. It was a huge office for one person, and my desk was covered with maps, just all kinds of stuff, maps and pages and of paper, and I had a big cleanup job. Well, as I was cleaning up my desk, I found this picture. I looked at it and I said, well, I've seen that picture before. What they did with the Cycler magazine is some guy was hired to do watercolors of the various facilities, and they put the watercolored picture on the cover of the magazine. Well, when I got to Oklahoma, all of a sudden, I said, hey, I know that thing because I worked there. I started there. And I found this picture on my desk, and I probably asked if I could have it, but maybe I didn't. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, I went home with me because nobody else would have known what it was. And later on, probably 10 or 15 years later, we still had it. And my wife said, and I had an office at the house, and she said she took it and had it framed, and I didn't know it, brought it home and gave it to me. And it's been hanging in our house ever since.
Yeah.
It was a pretty neat picture because this is the way the plant was when I worked there, and most of the time when Bobby worked there, and most of the time
when I lived there.
Yes, that is correct.
It looks a little more expanded than when I first moved there, because I was only about 5 years old then. And that would have been 1943.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Maybe you remember when they did that first construction job.
I probably almost do, but I didn't, Dad really never talked about what he did. Never. So that was the reason I was glad Bobby was going to be here today, because he was there. Well, he knows what Dad did. He took his place.
I had some more dealings with the Conroe gas plant after I left. I went from Carthage to the home office in Fort Worth, and became a part of the construction engineering group. And in 1975, while I was still in Carthage, they were building the new plant at Conroe. They'd renamed the plant from Midland Gasoline Plant to Conroe Gas Plant. And when they got ready to start the new plant up, I was on the startup crew, and I came back down there to help start up the plant.
Now, before that time, exactly what did they do at the Midland?
That's a good question. When Midland plant was first brought there, that was a long time before my time, but I'm pretty sure that what they did, it was a gasoline plant. The oil field produced oil, but the plant brought in gas, casing head gas, that came off of the wells. And the wells was rich in liquids like propane and butane, but it was very rich in condensate, or what we would take the gasoline from. So it was really a gasoline plant in the very beginning, and they were removing gasoline from that inlet gas stream that came in. Now later, and this is the time I don't know, but I think about 49, they made a change to make it into what we call an absorption oil plant that would chill the gas a little bit so that you could get more than just gasoline. And once they got this plant there, they recovered then the gasoline, of course, some butane and propane, right, Bobby?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real
big change.
Big change. It made them a lot more money there, but my recollection is it only cooled the gas down to about 52 degrees, and that was a long way from what they do now. But but it did really increase the recovery, and that was a good economic thing to do at the time because it saved a lot of that gas from being burned. Right across the highway from the plant was a huge flare that burned 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Back in those days, we didn't have gas pipelines to take the gas away, so in order to process gas and get the oil, the gas had to go somewhere, and it was a big
Burned
flare.
it all.
Burned it all.
Okay. Well, then in 1975, when you assisted with the change again, what did they cease doing, or what did they do at that time?
We built, well, I didn't help build this one.
Okay.
That was my business later on for a lot of gas plants. But this one was being built while I was still in Carthage. They built what they call a cryogenic plant. And what happens is the gas temperature gets reduced to very, very cold temperatures. I can't remember on this one whether it went down as low as minus 150 degrees.
Wow.
But it could have only gone down maybe minus 125.
Yeah.
When it gets that cold, all of the liquids get condensed that's in the natural gas. And then it goes into a big tank, and then it goes to a fractionation system. Now, they didn't really operate the fractionation system anymore after they started the cryo, didn't they, Bobby?
Yeah, they went to Exxon.
It went to a tank, and then all the liquid got pumped as a liquid down into a pipeline. So, but they still made a lot more. They got it all. When it gets that cold, you get all you can get.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really a good process.
Yeah.
They wanted a little more ethane, so later on, in about 6 or 7, we made a little change. A friend of mine named Dylan Bumgardner was the engineer and manager of that particular change, and that was completed. And when we did that, we could recover even more product to make a little more money. It was a real good deal.
Yeah.
Harold McGee came there in about '63, and when Champlin started managing the plant, Marvin Hyman left and went to San Antonio and took over another plant over there. Let's see.
So when you didn't retire until 1999, right?
I retired in 1999.
So what did you do between 75 and 99? Sorry.
Thank you for asking. We had an engineering and construction group, and I was a member of the engineering and construction group, and our main job was to build gas plants.
I see.
So we wound up building gas plants. We went down to South Texas, and we modified gas plants. They had an absorption oil plant down in Gulf Plains.
Okay.
We went down there and changed it to a cryogenic plant in 1978. We went to East Texas in we did East Texas first in 76 and converted it in Carthage to a cryogenic plant. Then we worked on plants in Brady and Rock Springs, Wyoming, 2 plants up there.
And this was all in the name of Champlin?
All in the name of Champlin.
Okay.
And then we did one in Utah, 2 out in West Texas. But it was very busy. We had enjoyed our working career with Champlin. Champlin eventually became Union Pacific
That's
Resources.
what I was going to ask you.
When Union Pacific purchased Champlin in 76. We built the Brady gas. Was not involved in the construction of the Brady gas plant, but it was being built about the same time the Carthage plant was. Carthage started up in September of '75, and the Brady gas plant started up in November of '75. We went back in 1997 and I redid the Brady gas plant so that we could recover gas. It was a different process. And we built a cryogenic plant Patrick Draw facility that was about 20 miles away from the Brady plant.
Well, I had here that says Champlain trade name was changed to Union Pacific Resources Company during the 1990s. The Union Pacific Corporation spun off Union Pacific Resources, and in 2000 it went to Anadarko.
That's what happened. What happened was once Union Pacific Resources bought Champlain, the name Champlain did not change until
Yeah,
and then
Yeah.
in 70, 81, 82.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we
I
went-
just wrote down some notes.
But that was
I think
correct, what you
something
said.
happened.
But then Union Pacific decided Champlain name needed to go away, and they changed that name all over the whole company.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Bobby,
What?
what years did you work? Do you remember? You
No.
came in 1951,
Yeah,
and what did you do at first?
I signed on as a roustabout.
Okay. He had been a roustabout, and so you're a roustabout too.
Well, I worked for Mr. Doopy.
Okay, Daddy
Yeah.
did too.
The main thing I remember is when I went out there was about 20 people in the field, and all we did was he put us out there on the right of way and line with a weed eater. We went in there one day, and this guy said, Mr. Doopy, I want to ask you a question. He says, why do we mow these right of ways with a yo-yo, and you got a brand new tractor sitting in the garage? And he just looked at him for a minute, and he said, "Okay, we'll use a tractor tomorrow. You stay home. You stay home. You stay home."
That was his answer.
They changed their mind. They went ahead and yo-yoed. So
That's hilarious.
good enough reason.
he and his wife lived kind of isolated from us and the camp because they had that hedge all the way
Oh, yeah.
around
Oh, yeah.
their house. And we didn't know too much about Mr. Doopy. We just saw him occasionally, and we never saw her at all.
you didn't see her this one.
No. And the only thing that I have in my memory with Mr. Doopy is that one year when we were in high school, I would think I was probably 9th or 10th grade. The guys, I know I didn't do this now. I'm not always innocent, but I know I didn't do this. The guys decided they would take his mailbox.
Oh,
Oh my word, did we have repercussions
yeah.
from that? First of all, it was against the law, but
Oh, yeah.
we didn't, I don't guess anybody thought about that. This was Halloween, and of course, we never knocked on their door. We never asked for trick or treats, and we did everybody else in the camp. So I guess that was their way of speaking out to Mr. and Miss Doobie. I don't know. But it was kind of a funny event, except we all got in big trouble, and they had to go put the mailbox back in its place the next day.
Was he there? Did he watch him do it?
I doubt it. I don't know because it was night. We wandered around in the camp at night without any worry or fear of anything going or happening.
Well,
And the only other thing that I remember about it, Mr. Doopy was related to me by Barbara Palmer. They were fairly close to the Doopies because they came to the company in 1933, the same as Mr. Palmer and Mr. Doopy. Both came from around the area of Abilene in that
Yeah.
area, and came to that and started that plant with Mr. Brown. And the Mr. Doopy actually had been in Oklahoma before that, but that's where he married Winnie. And Barbara recalled when I talked to her on the phone that she and I and I don't know if any other kids were there, but we met a Brahma bull, and he had gotten across the cattle guard into the camp. Now, how? You know, we had open cattle law
Oh,
then,
yeah.
and there were cows. I mean, Daddy hit a horse once, and I hit a cow once in the car going to town. And so this Brown got inside the camp somehow, evidently. I didn't even remember. Barbara said that Mr. Doopy was the one that took care of that, too. So I guess he took care of a lot of our problems we didn't know about at the time.
He was a character.
I wonder. If
Oh, yeah, he was.
I wonder if it went to the people that processed the cows.
I don't know. No telling. He was not a real big guy, but he always had on, back then he had on one of those hard hats. And
Well, what happened to me? I went to work out there, and he always had that pipe in his mouth,
yeah.
and he was just a grinning, you know, and giving out the checks, delivering the checks. I hold that check up, and I looked at it. I ain't gonna tell you what it said. And anyway, I went up there and told him. I said, I won't be here tomorrow. And so I went home, told my wife, I said, I quit. She got the ad machine out. She said, how many pair of shoes did you buy last year? How many gallons of gas did it take you to go to Beaumont back every day? She had all figured I could work for a quarter an hour. So anyway, I went back out there the next morning and told him I changed my mind. I'm gonna make you a hand. And I stayed there 35 years.
35.
35 years.
That's not bad.
We had this one guy that was the meter man,
Okay.
and he married a lady from Belgium, and her folks had a car dealership out there in Belgium and had plenty of money. And
Who was that guy?
Earl Center.
Okay, Senna. I
Oh, I
forgot
remember
about
Earl,
him.
Yeah.
I forgot about him. Yeah.
Well, anyway, they went to him and told him, said, Earl, you're gonna have to take them checks and put them in the bank. You just put them in the drawer.
I remember that.
And so he decided to go ahead and cash it.
Just checks.
But he was kind of a handyman. He could do about
He
anything.
could do
That's right, he
anything. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I had a lot of good times out there.
Did you? Well, I have a little story here that my brother wrote. I don't know if I can lay my hands on it or not because I can't tell it exactly like my brother.
I didn't make you 35, but I did make 33.
Did you?
I made 33.
Daddy made 37, 37, I believe it said,
Yeah.
37 and a half or something
Yeah.
like that. My brother worked while he was going to college, just
Yeah.
like you did.
Uh-huh.
And this is my baby brother, and he worked in the plant because Daddy was over the field,
Yeah.
so he worked in the plant. And he says here that said because before all of the families moved their homes from the camp, I experienced some advantages that the company provided for students going to college, and that was working in the summertime. And the company was owned by Champlin, and the jobs were limited at the time. He said to the employees, children or offspring, he called it, and there were only 5 jobs, and they filled up fairly fast. And he said, I learned to do a lot of things. It was hard work because I had to mop up oil in the engine room about 100 yards long, and it had to be spotless, he said. Every day I did that, and I mowed the plant yard. And he said that took some skill because you had to have the skill not to turn the mower over, and he turned it over the first day.
Oh, no.
And Dad wasn't impressed at all. And then he said, one day my boss, the electrician, Don Page, you remember Don?
Yeah.
Sent me to the engine repair shop to get a metal stretcher. At the shop, Mr. Tyler told me they had sent it to the warehouse. Off to the warehouse I went, he said. And when I arrived there, Mr. Buddy Scott said they had sent it over to the chemical lab. So I went to the chemical lab, he said. And when I got there, Mike Reagan said he had sent it to the field garage. So the field garage was, of course, where my dad was because the men were having lunch. I walked in and asked where the metal stretcher was. And the entire room fell into laughter. My dad's head was bent toward the floor, and he looked up finally and said, "Son, I'm paying you to go to college." And I said, "Yes." And he looked at me and said, "Who taught you could stretch metal?" At that point, he said, I felt pretty stupid, but I thought it was kind of cute. The guys did play jokes on each other, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, that was a
Especially
student.
on kids.
I was there, and they had a real large, what was that piece of metal that hung across the engine to lift all the parts out in their own building?
Yeah.
They had it laying on the ground. It stretched all across the engine, and it had angle braces on each end. And Charlie McKnight was down on one end. He reached down there and he looked up at me on I was the other end. He said, "Grab that other end. We're going to move this." Of course, he reached down. I reached down and grabbed it. There wasn't any way, much less pick it up. They all just roared, you know. It's one of those jokes.
Well, I had a few things that that Elfrida recalled. You remember Jay and Elfrida Dorman,
Yep.
Yeah.
Jess's kids, and I've communicated with both them. Jay was the one who I first talked to, and he told me that Mr. Brown owned the company. And then he told me he brought Mr. Doopy and Mr. Palmer and Mr. Howell to the plant when he came. Well, you know, I had never heard that in my life, so I didn't believe him. So I went totally around the world and came back, and I haven't called Jay and told him he was right to start with, but I did tell his sister that he was right to start with. But she talked about spending a lot of time with the Palmers, and she said that Miss Palmer was always very kind to her. You know, her dad raised both those kids by himself. And so she said that she and the Palmer girls, spent a lot of time together. They were younger than I was, and I spent time with Barbara. Barbara was their older daughter, oldest one. And we rode bikes, and we rode, you know, we ran that whole countryside. We did not stay within this little yard that we had, but we rode all the country roads on our bikes and never thought about anybody hurting us or doing any harm to us or anything. We were free. And until the whistle sounded for lunch, we were free to go, you know. And then when it sounded at 3:30, did y'all get off at 3:30 or 4? I always thought it was 3:30 for some reason.
Started work at 7:30.
Yeah, I thought it was 3:30, but I'm not sure during the day.
Yeah,
I think
You only had about 30 minutes at lunch, didn't you?
that was made at 4.
Yeah. So, but anyway, as long as that we were there, you know, a lot of times if we were going to have a campfire or something, we had to be within sight. We had to be, Mama had to see us building the fire. But we would be down the high line somewhere, and she'd just look out and see us there. But other times we were off, she couldn't see us and didn't know where we were, and we rode all those roads. Now, when I learned to drive over there on Crater Hill Road. You know where that
Oh,
was. I drove over there
Over
and
by the
bumped
fish
along.
pond.
Yeah. And Elfrida recalled that when I learned to drive and got my license, Mom would let me take the car and drive around to Humble Camp and get us a strawberry soda, she said. This is where we would get a strawberry soda because I was driving, you know, we'd drive around the corner and come back home. So it was always a time where we had fun, we had freedom, we had put lots of miles on our bikes.
Great playground for kids.
Oh yeah, and my husband says today that it was an idyllic childhood.
It really was.
Because we didn't. The only thing that concerned me when I first moved there was the war. You know, when we moved there in '43, we were in World War II almost, about all during that time, and that was our concern, because we sat around, listened to the radio. They had blackouts later, and so that was our concern. We moved into that house, Bobby. Daddy bought it for $200. And you built yours. We bought ours from the Kaufmans. Or Kaufman's one. Coffee, maybe? Kaufman. And we lived there until 1958, maybe, because I think we moved. I think that's what Larry told me, my brother Larry, that we moved when he was when we were married in '60. They were in the company house. And the company house, of course, the company provided all the utilities.
Yes.
But most people owned their own houses, or there was those 3 company houses on the other side when we lived there.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure they had company houses when the plant first started.
No, they
I
had
don't
them
think
later.
they did.
They come later.
Yeah, people came, they built a house or something, and then they moved the house and went somewhere else. So you built yours, didn't you, when you lived there?
Yeah.
From scratch. So, yeah.
Well, they didn't have a company house open.
No. And you lived there, what, 10 years?
10 years.
10 years.
Never saved a dime.
No. You would have thought we would have been rich when we left, wouldn't you? Not paying rent, not paying utilities.
Yeah, they paid the lights, gas, water.
And
everything.
then they furnished the red gas. You remember that?
The what?
The gas we burned in our cars for about
Oh, yeah, I wore out several cars.
yeah, rattling along.
And no, I didn't rattle.
Well, some of them rattled.
What
Well, it's
embarrassed
going to
me,
how fast you wanted to go, Peggy.
That was it.
well, I'll tell you the truth, what really embarrassed me about that Champlin gas, I had an Oldsmobile station wagon.
Okay.
I'd pull up in town to the parking lot, and I'd usually turn the key off and jump out and run out on the street. The thing would keep running.
It kept running. It didn't quit.
Yeah, and people come by there and look, you know.
Wasn't nobody in the car. I remember it doing that.
Well, it's pretty good gasoline, though.
Yeah.
I fixed a 50-gallon tank to put in my boat.
Okay.
I'd fill it up, and I drove it to Texoma. I got up there and run out of gas, and I went and bought some real gasoline.
Yeah.
It wouldn't run a drop. It wouldn't run nothing.
I'll be doggone.
So I
Your vehicle or whatever was used to the other kind.
Yeah. So I took it up there and had a guy work on it, and he said, "No, what you do, you take it back home and put it on the lake, fill it up with your gasoline, and put it back out on the lake. Try it." And I did, and it worked fine.
What? Of all things. So you better not run out of gasoline back
No.
then.
So back then, see, we were busy in the church.
Yeah.
And my wife had Sunday school class, and I had the RA boys.
Right.
Well, every weekend we'd go somewhere, either to Huntsville or somewhere in that boat.
So you used it all the
Oh
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And had this group of Sunday school group took the preacher's grandson. He's the only one I couldn't get to ski. He was.
Well, one time we went to, well, every time in the summertime, you're talking about summertime activities, and Daddy would come in from work at 3:30 or 4. Mama always had a cup of coffee ready for him, but from then on, it was either out in the garden, or doing something. He never was still. He had animals out back, outside of the
And
plant,
he fished all.
and he fished all the time. But he would come in the summertime, and we weren't in school, and we would say, "Dad, please take us to Annabelle Hole." Did you ever know anything about an Annabelle Hole? It was a hole somewhere on Caney Creek that he took us swimming to all the time. And we would beg him, take us to Annabelle. Well, he'd load the car full of kids out in the camp and take us all over there and let us go swimming in that hole on Caney Creek for about an hour or two in the evening after he had gotten off work. And he took my cousin with us one time. She was only about 4 or 5 years old. She didn't know how to swim.
Uh-oh.
And there was one place, and we had all just jumped in, when we went across the creek, and we were all on the other side. And she said, I felt like I wanted to go over there on the other side with y'all. And she said, I knew there was just one place that you could get across. And she said, I started across, and she said, it felt just like one of those whirlpools. Caught her and said, I just felt my hair all going up. And she said, I wasn't afraid. That she said, I would have drowned if Tommy hadn't pulled me out by the hair of the head. And so it was just a time where we had a good time. And plus, Daddy had been raised on a farm, and so he fit in with animals and gardens and all this stuff that he did, as well as fishing and hunting. So, and that was what he loved to do on his free time. He's playing with his retirement watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dad, yeah, and I had a picture here of somebody getting a retirement watch, and it must have been back in the 40s. And it was, I believe, I've forgotten who it was now, but I have a picture of John Palmer. And of course, there's Eddie's mother and father in the barbecue line.
Good place to be.
We had barbecues, and we had fish fries.
Had good barbecues too.
Great
Oh,
barbecue, and this one I think was I was in high school. It looks like I was maybe a sophomore or freshman or something. Barbara was 2 years older than I was, so we were in high school, and I don't know where Shirley was. That's your sister,
Yeah.
but your parents were there, and I've been given that picture twice. There's my dad in front of the engines. I don't know if they ever took any more pictures like that or not of the guys in front of the plant. I don't know why they took this picture. And then his retirement dinner. This was his retirement dinner. Did you have a retirement dinner or anything?
Yeah,
You did? Back here in 77, they had his retirement dinner at the Holiday Inn banquet room. Holiday Inn at the Y down there. And it was kind of they had this banquet room. You could have special things there, and so that's what they did. And I didn't know anybody there, and I didn't know even looking at the picture, I don't know anybody. But they gave Dad his watch at the time, just like they did you. It was the only other thing that I really remembered that I thought was worth knowing was when I started to school. I started to school in the same year that we moved out there. And we didn't just walk across out to the road and catch the bus. We walked all the way to the end of that road. The bus came around that Humble camp, and they picked us up at the end of that road and then made a left turn. So we walked about 1/4 of a mile that first year. I felt so big and important, because I was doing this under the direction of older kids. And Mr. Sam Doyle was our bus driver, and he gave everybody a picture of himself in the bus, Lulu. And I rode his bus, I don't know how long, but at second grade, I was thrown off the bus. He sent me home and said, "You can't come back on this bus tomorrow without your parents." So I was so embarrassed, you know. And Daddy had to go with me to catch the bus, and this was in second grade. And so when he got there, he wanted to know what was going on, and Mr. Dahl told him that I was running up and down the aisles of the buses. I wasn't the only one, but we were all running up and down the center aisle of the bus. And so he wasn't going to have that. He was a real strict bus driver. Later on, we had another really strict one. And you remember, I don't know if you remember them or not, but those grandsons of the Bryants, there were Miller, their names were Miller, Bobby Miller, Leland Miller. Well, they lived there after you, I guess, had already left.
That's Chuck Miller's kid?
You know,
No.
Luke Bryant's grandkids.
Oh,
Luke.
okay.
We were riding over there on Colstead Road before you get to Humboldt Camp. And one of them, I don't know what he did with his cap, but I believe his name was King. Mr. King just took that cap and threw it out the window and just kept driving. And another time, I don't know what he did. One of them did. He just stopped the bus and said, "You can walk the rest of the way home." And he just drove off and left him. And these were high school boys, you know, and they just didn't put up with it. And they got away with it too, because our parents supported them and everything that they had them doing. So it was an interesting time, to say the least.
I always said, our group of people, our age, lived up the best of America.
Oh, that's
You
right.
think so?
That's the way I feel about it.
You think we did it then?
Yes, sir.
You remember when Harold came, they started that safety program at the plant, the hard hat, you know the deal with the hard hats?
Yeah, and I never wore a hat in my life.
Everybody had to have a hard hat, and Harold McGee decided that what was gonna happen was that, if I can remember this right, the roustabouts and the utility posts would have green hats. Operators had blue hats. I worked in the lab, I got a yellow hat. And the bosses all had silver hats. Well, we all had our hard hat, and you could know who was, if you happened to be up on the cooling tower and you weren't supposed to be there, they could figure out who it was real quick.
I saw one more thing here that I know that we haven't addressed, and that was the constant vibration and sound of the engines.
I can hear them at my house in Conroe.
Exactly. We lived with that, and that's one of the things that Alfreda mentioned was that the 24-hour chugging of the engines at the plant. And after a while, we didn't even notice it, and we were sitting right on top of it nearly, but we didn't
And you
notice
get to
it.
the point that you can just lay down there on the
You could go to sleep.
foundation and sleep like a
Now,
love.
when that whistle went off at night, 3 times,
Yeah.
it meant my daddy better get to the plant because something was wrong. And that happened a few times in our life too.
Yeah.
One night I remember Daddy stayed doggone all night, but not too many times did that happen. Now one night, we were so proud when we got an attic fan. We didn't have air conditioning at first. We got an attic fan and my bed was right in front of the window. And just, I don't know what woke me up, but out of the blue, I opened my eyes and the sky was red. And I said, the world is ending. That's what I thought. The world is ending. It's on fire. And I got up to investigate. I never did find out what happened, but something had blown out, not on our plant side, but back out in the other part of the field. And I never did. Dad never said what happened.
We had a lot of good times at the plant. met people, and we've known them all our lives, and I think about them, and often, as I told Bobby, I think a lot about him, and it was great to have people that you know and that you work with, and you didn't have a lot of the stress that you have nowadays.
No.
These people worked together, they knew what they were supposed to do. Sometimes you rested a little bit, but nobody said, no, he's hiding.
Yeah.
You know, it was a good relationship.
Yes,
It was great.
Yeah. And there was another thing that they did for each other. You remember when Mildred Pruitt was killed in a car wreck? My brother reminded me that they moved her house outside of the camp yard, but they still hooked her up to the utilities till she could arrange for somewhere to move, or something. It was something similar to that. They let her stay there without charging her extra for staying there once he was killed. And then one guy, and I don't know if you were there then or not, Bobby, when my little girl I was in first grade with, her mother shot her father and killed him. She woke him up for his job, and
I know about that.
yeah, that was before y'all's time. But people, bad things happen. What I'm trying to say is bad things happen, but they didn't seem to control our lives. We weren't constantly bombarded with evil, with bad things. So I don't know.
Well, they didn't have marijuana then.
Yeah, I guess that was it.